Good afternoon, everyone. Please let me know if you can hear me. You could drop an emoji if you can hear me. All right, awesome, awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. I see some people are joining also from other countries, so I would say good day. My name is Jimmy, and I'm your co-host for today's webinar. So before we dive into the main business for today, we'd just like to have some introductions, getting to meet some of our participants, people dialing in. So um, I don't know if somebody would like to volunteer. Let's get to meet you. Hi, Samuel. How you doing? If you can't turn on your microphone, it's fine. Would anybody would like to volunteer? Let's just get to meet you. Let's know you. Would like to know the people that are dialing in. Hello, Favor.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everybody. Favor. Uh, yeah. Yes.
Okay. Nice to meet you, Favor. Christine, how you doing? How is your day going?
I'm doing all right.
Sorry, I didn't get that. What did you say?
Oh, I said I'm doing okay. Yeah,
How's your day going? How's your day going?
it's going all right.
Awesome, awesome. Awesome, great. I can see one of our speaker is here now, but we don't want to dive into that right now. So, thank you all for joining once again. My name is Jimmy. For people that just joined in, and I'm a technical writer in Writer Hub, and I'll be your co-host for today. So today's webinar is about how to start contributing to open source documentation as a technical writer. It's a very exciting topic, and I'm excited to also learn because we learn every day, we unlearn, and we learn every day. So I'm really excited about this particular topic, and hopefully everybody here as well is excited. And I'm sure by the end of today's webinar, everybody would pick up one or two things and start contributing to open source. So just before I dive into today's agenda, I would just like to introduce the host for today. Her name is Kando Dennis, and she'll take it up from here. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. So sorry, guys. Sorry for joining in late. Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Jimmy. I see a few of my friends on the call. I can see Samuel. I see Christine, and I see Chioma. Hi, everyone. Hi, guys. Welcome. Okay, so I think this is like the very first webinar we've been able to put up as a brand here at Tech Hub. And it is such a pleasure that we have a number of you currently on the call ready to listen to what we have prepared, also with the help of our speakers. So again, welcome everyone. I would just like for us to do a little activity before we get started. So you can use the comments. I see that there's already some conversation happening in the comments, but let's spice it up a little bit. Introduce yourself. Also, note where you're watching from or where you're connecting from, and what you would like to learn from this webinar, from our conversations going forward. Let's just do that for the next 2 or 3 minutes, and let's see where that leads us. Okay. Simply introduce yourself. Okay, I'll go first. Since I'm speaking, I'll just continue without using the comments. Hi, everyone. My name is Dennis Kandel, and I currently lead programs at Tech Hub. And it's a pleasure to be the host for today. And I would also be assisted by Jimmy, who introduced me impromptu. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't see any conversation on the comments. The chat section, rather. so just before okay, so I guess we'll just continue. So every other person who joined would, so the theme of this webinar, as you all know, for those who already had an idea before joining the conversation today, is how to start contributing to open source documentation as a technical writer. And we have very wonderful speakers who are experts in these areas, speakers who will be dishing out two main important points that we'd like to talk about in the course of this conversation. And those 2 points are, first, how to create clear and concise documentation. And the second is, how do you contribute to open source documentation? For those who are part of the WriteTech Bootcamp, the one that just concluded, you would agree that some parts of this conversation we have touched sometime in week 4. And so this is like an add-on to the knowledge you already have. And I really hope that you guys are ready to learn and connect with as much people as possible this webinar. Without wasting so much time, let's get to introduce our first speaker. And he'll be giving insights on how to create clear and concise document. Yes, how to create clear and concise documentation. Please do. How to create clear and concise documentation, that's correct. And we'll be listening to Emmy Steven.
Hi, everybody. Would I say good evening from this side of the world? I'm Emmy Steven. I'm a technical writer / documentation engineer. And so if you can hear me, let me just see some emojis so that I'll know I'm not just talking to myself. Okay, that's great.
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, so so writing a clear and concise documentation is very key to is very key to contributing to open source projects, because that could make or mar the API you want to create a documentation for. That, there was a time, I don't want to mention the name of the project so that the fans here will not crucify me. So there was this particular project, it's a very popular front-end, framework or library. And there's this, people were complaining, I don't know if that has changed, that the documentation was not just helping it. And people had to go to YouTube to listen to people who have been able to figure out how to use this particular front-end framework effectively for them to just get started using the framework and stuff like that. And so that created, several versions of how to do this or how not to do that and stuff like that. So that could have been easily solved if the documentation for this particular open source project was clear and concise, such that people can understand it and then get started. But I want to believe that by now that should have changed. So that will lead me to my topic, how to create a clear and concise documentation. So without further much ado, I'd love to share my screen. Okay. All right, so just a moment. So all right, so how to create clear and concise documentation. So before that, we need to look at the importance of clear and a concise documentation. So the importance of a clear and concise documentation is that one of the points that I have here is that information is easy to consume, saves your readers or audience time, and it helps to keep your audience attention. So we're in a day and age where attention is currency. Yes, you're contributing to open source projects, like people can use the product free. But as I would love to say, and I know it stands to be debated, there's really nothing free, not even in Freetown, not even free open source project and what have you. Because you as the user, when you're using that content, stuff like that, you are paying with two things. You are paying with your time and you're paying with your attention. The person who has created that documentation, quote and unquote, free of charge, has rented a space in your head. All right. Then the next thing is, so you want to keep a clear and concise documentation helps to keep your audience or your readers' attention. And then the next thing it does is that your audience will take you more seriously. It helps to minimize confusion amongst the users of that API or product. And it also helps to future-proof your project. So by future-proofing your project, I mean this. So let's say you are done with that documentation. Somebody wants to contribute. Somebody wants to work on that documentation. Let's say a new person and stuff like that. So if the documentation you did was not that good or not so good, that person that wants to contribute to that documentation, we have a lot of overhauling to do, right? We have a lot of, it's going to be very, very messy for that person. And just as I have a software engineering background, a large one at that. So one of the things software engineers dread a lot is inheriting a code base that is messy, right? I've seen situations where software engineers will have to just resign because they cannot just deal with that code base. They just leave, right? So same thing, technical writers / documentation engineers, they dread bad documentation. Sometimes it feels like you should just rewrite the whole thing, and that's because the person who did the last documentation, who worked on it, the documentation was not future-proofed because the person didn't observe certain best practices while the person was, documenting and stuff like that. So when you write a clear and a concise documentation, what it does is that it helps to future-proof your project. So let's move on to how we can, create a concise documentation. So the first thing that we want to do, or the first thing you want to do when you want to create a clear and a concise documentation is you have to know who you're writing for, right? You have to know your audience. You have to know your users. Who are the people that are going to be using this documentation, right? And sometimes it can be very, very tricky to know the people who will be using your documentation and stuff like that. So one thing to do to know that will help you know who you're writing for is to group your audience, say, into based on their role, expertise level, and use case. So this API document, for instance, if you're doing an API documentation, you know that you're writing basically for software engineers, right? So if you're writing basically for software engineers who want to consume that API, what kind of software engineer are you writing for? Are you writing for a beginner? Are you writing for an intermediate software engineer? Or are you writing for a senior software engineer? And sometimes you can even ask the people or the software engineers, you have to work hand in hand with them and ask them, this particular documentation, right? Or sorry, this particular API, who do you think would be are the people that are likely to be using it? So if it's an API that says a financial API, so it has a lot of risk exposure. So the company that will say designate a software engineer to consume that particular API you're documenting for might want to use a senior software engineer for that because of the risk involved if anything should go wrong, right? So with that, depending on the project or the API you're working on, and then the conversation you've had with the software engineers that built that API, it will help to inform, okay, you know that this stuff you're working for, this stuff you're working on, or this API you're working on, you are doing it for what I would call a senior software. You are writing for senior software engineers or intermediate and stuff like that. So the case it's likely going to be different if that documentation, the experience level is for those who are just starting their career in software engineering who wants to consume your API. So another thing that helps you to know your audience is to develop a persona. So if you develop, like creating a persona is like having an idea of, okay, let's say you've discussed with the software engineers that created the API and stuff like that. You can answer, okay, I think this documentation I'm trying to do, what I will call, I'm writing for an intermediate software engineer who wants to consume this API. So kind of like try to put yourself in the shoe of that engineer. Like what are the things this person is likely to know? What are the things this person is likely not to know? So that way you are informed as to who you are writing for, the kind of software engineer you're writing for, right? Then after you've done all of that, then the next thing in line with knowing who you are writing for is to tailor. Please forgive the sound you are hearing. I don't know if you guys can hear the call for prayer. So another thing you want to take into consideration, right, is then you have to tailor your writing, your tone, and the detail level to fit the needs and the expectation of your audience. So this goes hand in hand with knowing your audience. So I'd like to point out something that it happens a lot when you are documenting, is that as a technical writer, you are likely to suffer from what they call the cost of knowledge. Like when somebody is cost, right? The cost of knowledge. And what is this cost of knowledge? Is that you find it difficult to explain something, quote and unquote, that is simple to you. You find it difficult to explain to newcomers and stuff like that. So one of the things that knowing your audience helps you to do is to deliver you from that, quote and unquote, the cost of knowledge, right? So that's one thing you need to like take note of. Then the next thing in creating a clear and a concise documentation is that you want to use a consistent style, right? You want to use a consistent style. And one good way to use a consistent style is to adopt a style guide. So a style guide basically define rules you use for formatting your document, define the rules for spelling. So if you're writing to an American audience, for instance, if you want to spell color, COLOUR, if you're writing to a British audience, that's the correct spelling. If you're writing to an American audience, that's probably the wrong spelling. You might want to go for COLOR. I don't know if that makes sense. So a style guide will define all those rules. To define the grammar, to define the tone. So this style guide we are writing, so some companies might say for the tone, we want a standard tone. For the tone, we want a creative tone. We want a conversational tone. We want an academic tone, or we want a relaxed tone, or we want a serious tone. Sometimes it's a mix in between. Some will say we don't want it to be too conversational. At the same time, we don't want it to be too serious. So you just have to find that sweet spot. And a style guide takes care of all of that. And then sometimes there are some projects you're working on. Let's say you want to contribute to some open source projects. The existing documentation on ground, sometimes for you to contribute, they don't provide you with any style guide, like this is what to do if you want to contribute to the documentation. So at that moment, you have to now adopt either the Google style guide or the Microsoft style guide. If you are working for a company, right, that is a Microsoft shop, it will make a lot of sense to use the Microsoft style guide. If you are working for a company that is a Google shop, right, maybe they are using Google Cloud and stuff like that, it will make a lot of sense that when you're doing the documentation for them, you might want to just go with, it will make a lot of sense to go with Google style guide. That is if they don't have any on ground. Then if the company has on ground, then you have to use their custom or the company style guide. So that will help you to have a consistent style in your writing. Then moving to the next one, you have to aim. Another thing you have to aim for is you have to aim for a clear and simple writing, right? So by clear and simple writing, I mean make use of short sentences, use the active voice, and use simple words. You don't want to test your, what will I call it? You don't want to test your user's vocabulary. You don't want a situation where somebody's reading your documentation. On one hand is on another tab is opening a dictionary, maybe Oxford Dictionary, to try to know the meaning of what you are saying. Or on the other hand is a tab is open constantly for the person to be checking the meaning of the words directly from ChatGPT and stuff like that. You don't want that. That will distract your users, and that might make you to lose the attention of the people you are writing for, right? So you want to use simple words. And then another thing with using simple words is you don't want a situation where you are insulting the intelligence of your users. So there's a thin line between making something simple and then insulting the intelligence of your users, like saying things that are obvious that even, say, a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old can understand. Then another thing is when you want to, another point is making use of illustration and graphics is a no-brainer. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So there are certain things that it will be very, very difficult for you to convey the meaning, to convey what you're trying to write or what you're trying to communicate with words. Not that it's not doable, but it's kind of like difficult. But when you have, or what you're writing has a bit of illustration, some graphics, some GIF in it, it makes consuming that documentation a whole lot easy for your audience, right? The other thing you have to take into consideration is you have to employ what I'll call the tree structure, like using headers and sub-headers or subheadings, right, in your documentation. So I don't want to come to, sometimes one thing about documentation is that some people that land on the documentation, sometimes they just want to quickly solve a problem, and more often than not, your headings and your subheadings, we help them quickly skim through and know the particular place to look for to solve that particular problem that they want to solve, or that particular bug they are trying to deal with. Because sometimes you have some software engineers, right? I know it's bad practice, but I see it being carried out a lot. Some persons who just, because they just have an idea of how this whole thing works, they just start developing, and when they hit a roadblock, that's when they consult the documentation. And you want to cater for those kind of people too. So your heading and your subheadings plays a lot in helping them. And the next thing we want to touch on is accuracy. Accuracy. This cannot be overemphasized. Accuracy is key. You have to get your facts right when you are, when you're writing a documentation, when you want to write a clear and a concise documentation. Accuracy is very, very important. You want to check your documentation for errors, inconsistency, and gaps. By gaps, I mean knowledge gaps. And then you want to update your documentation regularly as your API or program changes. So by that I mean, there are APIs that have version 1, version 2. So when there's a version 2, it will make a lot of sense that you update your, your documentation to reflect the changes that we have in the version 2 of your APIs or API program. Same thing if it's a program. If a program should change because of a change in the API and stuff like that, you want to update your documentation as well. You also want to explain concept thoroughly, even if they seem basic, right? So you want to take all of that into consideration when you are crafting or you are building your documentation. And the next thing we want to look at is you have to make your documentation easy to update and easy to reuse. So one way for you to achieve that is to employ what I will call modularity in your documentation. So when you employ modularity in your documentation, you write your documentation in such a way that you can easily add you can easily remove, you can easily update sections of that documentation without affecting the whole documentation, right? It's just like how we have, for some of us that's coming from a software engineering background, just as how we have reusable components in software engineering, like maybe reusable UI components for those who are doing front end and stuff like that. The same technique is being applied to, when you want to make your documentation modular, you have to take that into consideration. The another thing you want to do when you are writing your documentation is to employ what I call topic-based writing. So topic-based writing, what it entails is that you have to focus on explaining specific topics, right? Rather than being product specific. So when you do this, when you explain specific topics, like you categorize certain sections of the product into topics and then you write on it, it helps your documentation to be modular. And then another thing is creating a central repository for things like code snippets, glossary definition, and troubleshooting steps. So what this solves for you in documentation is that possibly you have some other set of documentation that you have to do, that each of this documentation you just discover there's a pattern. There are certain things you are repeating, just like for some of us that are coming from software engineering background, you see that, okay, for a variety of projects I've worked on, I see that I keep doing this particular thing. So instead of me repeating myself, I save that thing that I'm using to repeat myself, possibly in a library and stuff like that. So the same concept is employed when you are documenting an API or a product. And then there are tools that help you to do that. We'll touch on that later. And I think I'm close to concluding. I just have 3 minutes left. So the last but not the least is you have to review and test what you've written. You have to review for completeness. Don't write a documentation that when you are done writing, the user is like, does this thing have part 2? You should not, for lack of a better word to use, don't give a vibe of to be continued. So it's more or less like somebody writes something and you're like, you just feel like this thing has a second part, that kind of a thing. So it should be complete, it should be holistic, right? You should not leave any stone unturned, and that's what you want to watch out for when you are reviewing. Then the next thing you want to do is to check for accuracy. I think we've touched on that. Check on clarity. For clarity, right, there's an application that helps for that. You can use Hemingway editor. So that application is so nice. It helps, like it gives you a score and gives you some color coding, and with that color coding for what you've written, it helps to judge if what you've written is clear and stuff like that, if you need to break up the sentence and stuff like that. Another application that equally helps well is Grammarly in terms of clarity. However, I would like to warn that it's not every suggestion that Grammarly gives you accept, because I've seen some stuff that these things are technical terms, but grammatically speaking in English, it's kind of like wrong, right? So what will now happen is that Grammarly will just replace those words for you, and if you accept it, you've defeated the purpose for that. It will not make any sense at all, right? Then the next thing is you want to check for consistency. You want to review consistency. You want to also check if your documentation is maintainable and stuff like that. So I know this might look like a quick rush. That's because I'm pressed for time and I want to keep to the time slot that I was given. I think at this junction, I would love to yield the mic. So I don't know if there's any question or something like that. I think I'm done with my presentation.
Thank you so very much, Emmy, for making this as simple as possible. And even though it seemed like you were rushing through a few things, I think it was pretty much broken down so everyone could understand. But aside that, does anyone have any question before we move on to the next activity? Yes, please, Omar.
Okay. Good evening, all. Shine, good evening to you.
Yeah,
And
good
good
evening.
evening to you as well. My question is, are we going to get these slides after the, what is it called? After the webinar?
Yes, you should. If you give your consent, Emmy, you can share the link with us, and we'll forward that to every person who wants to support.
Yeah, sure, I will do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anyone have any other question? So this webinar is okay, Mojid is asking, what's the name of the app used to check for clarity?
Okay, so I said one app that can help is the Hemingway editor. I'll just type it in the chat. It's Hemingway editor. The another another app is you can make use of Grammarly, right? But I think Grammarly is it's centered more on grammar, but Hemingway is super good with clarity.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for your time, Amy. Thank you for sharing how to make documentation clear and concise. And we'll be moving on to the next activity. Oh, yes, Ahmad. I don't know if I said that right. Ahmad has a question.
Yeah, thank you. So Emmy, thanks for the presentation. So I just want to ask about the you said it should be simple. Now, is there anything like too simple? So you said you can be, targeting maybe beginners, intermediates, or professionals. So is there anything as being too simple for maybe if you are targeting intermediates? Is there anything like too simple for an intermediate?
Okay, so when I was talking about too simple, drawing the line between too simple, creating a simple documentation or using words that are simple enough to understand, and then drawing the line between that and insulting your user's intelligence and stuff like that. That way, the level of simplicity you use, right, will depend on, like I said, the first point you treated, your target audience, who are the people you are talking to, and stuff like that. There's I've written a documentation, and the person was like, the people we are targeting are Java champions. You cannot be using this kind of words for them. Do you understand? So if you are writing for Java champions, in quotes, for Google developer experts and stuff like that, these people are like good at what they do and stuff like that. These are experts. You cannot be using the words you use if it's somebody that is just kind of like starting and stuff like that. Because when you are using, in quotes, simple words for people who are starting, your documentation tends to be a little bit lengthy, right? Versus when you are talking to experts, quote unquote, it seems to be like direct to the point. Some of the terminologies or jargons you are going to be using in your documentation is something that is assumed that those people, they should know it, that kind of a thing. So that's just it. So when it comes to being simple or being too simple, it depends on your target audience. It depends on you knowing your audience, knowing who you are writing for. So that's just it.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I don't know if Jimmy mentioned this at the beginning of the webinar. This is going to be a pretty interactive session. So there are some persons who asked questions regarding what we just considered. Now, this is the point where you get to answer questions that are in relation to what you have learned in this past few minutes of this conversation. And Emmy, if you would kindly stop sharing your screen so I can share mine. Great, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I would like everyone to follow the instructions. You would see a link, or you can scan the QR code that will give you access to the platform that we'll be using for this session. Okay, if you can see my screen, just use the just give a thumbs up so I can go on. Okay, great. So in the next few minutes, we're just going to give some time, scan the code you're looking at, or go to www.menti.com and then enter the code on the screen. I'm going to give about 3 minutes for you to do that, and we'll go over some questions. So these questions are in relation to what have been discussed on creating a clear and concise documentation. Very simple. You just get to answer them, and there would be okay, maybe Peace can confirm that, but then since this is interactive, we'll also be looking out for those who answered the most questions and those who won, right? Yes, those who were most engaging during this. Okay. If you have scanned this code and if your screen is showing something like waiting for a presenter, just use the thumbs up again so we can go on. Great, Anita, well done. Anyone else? Okay. Right, I'll just leave 1 more minute for the rest of you to do that, and then I would swag to the next slide. Awesome, we have more persons. Okay, so let's go on. Like I mentioned earlier, this session, this interactive question and answer session is around how to create a clear and concise documentation. So these are the questions you can answer. How can screenshots help to improve understanding? There should be an option for you to give answers on the app if you are there currently. So you can quickly type in your answers and they'll be reflected on the screen. Awesome, we have one response. Great. We have 2 more responses. It helps the reader to have accurate understanding. It helps you reflect at later time what you've read. Okay. But in relation to concise documentation, that's what the question is about. Helps with clarity. Awesome, awesome. Well done. Okay, let's move on to the next one so we can save time. How do you determine the target audience for your documentation? So you don't have to put like a lengthy answer as long as you hit the point, as long as your answers are short and straight to the point, then you can submit. It seems you're taking some time on this question. We'll just do one more and then we'll go on to the next speaker. Okay, we have one based on the complexity of the topic, also based on the topic. Great. Okay, conduct user surveys. That's nice. By the complexity of your wording and sentences, the topic you're developing. Awesome. Well done, guys. Okay, let's take one last question and then we'll go on. What are the common pitfalls to avoid when creating documentation? using complex words, complexity. Do not insult the intelligence of your users. Well done. It's great to see that some of the answers here, it shows that you guys really listen to Amy as we were speaking. Okay, well done, everyone. Well done. We have more answers for this one than the others. That's great. Ease of use, language complexity. Make sure the information presented is accurate. Well done. Well done, everyone. This was fun, and I hope that you find the next one fun as well. So make sure you listen as we invite the next speaker. As previously mentioned, I would not be hosting this alone. So I would be inviting Jimmy to take over and introduce the next speaker.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Kando. It was an awesome topic. I learned a lot, and I hope everyone learned a lot too as well. So to move on, we have another amazing speaker, Michael. So Michael will be taking us on how to start contributing to open source documentation. He's going to dive into the specifics of contributing to open source. He's going to also share valuable tips and insights. And trust me, this is a very exciting session. So I hope you listen, you pick up some points, and yeah. Hello, Michael.
Hi everybody. How you doing? Hey, Jimmy.
Yes, awesome.
Hi, I can see. I'm fine. I can see some familiar faces here. I see Chrissy. Hey, Chrissy Codes. So, all right. So, can I start now?
Yeah, sure, you can. Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Window. Just gonna share this one. Okay. So can you guys see?
Yes,
Hello?
we can. Yes, we can. Yes.
Oh, awesome. So hello everybody. Today I'm gonna be taking you guys on how do you contribute to open source documentation. So this is gonna be a guide for new beginners in general. All right, so introduction, right? The first speaker must have talked about a lot of this, but let me just rush through them so we get everything right from start. All right, so open source software is just softwares that the code base is open to anyone and anybody can contribute and is not paid for. You don't need to pay to use them, right? So most of the popular ones that you might be familiar with are Linux, Mozilla, Python, LibreOffice, and the rest of that, right? So, and these are some few importance of documentation. It facilitates user onboarding, like it's make it easy for user to onboard with your software and stuff, right? So it enhance project usability. Now, when you have a good documentation, people tend to use your software. People tend to use your solution the more, right? Because they can easily navigate around those your software and they wouldn't get any issue. Jimmy, I am not currently on the what is it called? I'm not currently on the space, so you can, if you cannot hear me, you can actually make a sound.
Okay, sure. I will.
All right. So support developer contributions, right? This is another important. It encourages more developer to contribute by lowering the barrier to entry and providing clear instruction on how to get involved. In general, documentation provides clear instructions, right? An explanation helping users and contributors to understand how to use and how to contribute to your software in general, right? Now, how do we even start contributing to um, how do we start contributing to documentation of open source projects? Uh, the first thing we need to do is we need to identify the projects that we want to contribute to, right? So you need to know the projects that you want to contribute to. And one of the places where you can find these projects are on GitHub, GitLab, and other repositories. We have Bitbucket and the rest of that, right? So when you explore, when you search based on keywords, you find open source um, softwares that you can contribute to their documentation, right? So the next thing, let's say you have looked for good first issue tags on GitHub and the rest of that, and you have found the one that you want to contribute on. The next thing is for you to understand the guidance, right? Understand the guidelines for contributors. Now, you want to read the project's contribution guide. You want to join their community, their forums, their chats where they discuss about this project. You want to do that, so it will help you understand their guidelines, understand their culture in that community, and how you can contribute to them, right? So the next step you will need to do is to review existing documentation. So basically, there is no project that doesn't have an existing documentation. The worst they can have is a README. So they're gonna have a README file, which is like a semi-documentation to the project, right? So you wanna you wanna review those documentations which are already existing, identify the gaps and the outdated information, and then you can come in to provide your updates, right? So then you want to make use of platforms and tools to make these contributions. One of the platforms you can use is GitHub or GitLab, and the tools you can use is Markdown for writing Markdowns, right? Then you can use the things, the Jenkai, right? Sorry, I'm kind of a little bit fast because I mean I need to be fast. All right, so we have different types of contribution that you can make as a person. Now, you might be writing a new documentation entirely for the project, where you tend to write the user guide and the API references. Most of the time, this is like mostly written by the devs, but then you might be in the position to come in and write that, right? Another thing is you might be fixing the documentations, in the sense that maybe you, as you're reading through the existing documentation, you're able to find typos and informations that are outdated. Then it is left for you now to come and fix those problems, right? So fixing typos is is some kind of simple and general means of contributing that I mostly come across. You see, many people just like identify typos, even on websites, even on existing websites. They identify typos on their contents, they reach out to the team, and then they fix it. Wow, you are now a contributor, just like that. Yeah, it's that simple. All right. So the next one is translating documentation, right? So you might find yourself in a position where you need to translate a particular documentation into another language, right? So when that happens, then you know that you need to collaborate with people who speaks that language, who are native speaker of that language, so that they might help you and then make things easy for you to work around them, right? So another one is how to do's. You want to create a guide or a video tutorial for the software. for the application, for the open source software in general. Mostly, this is what DevOps do, but then you might find yourself in a position to do this as a contributor to the open source, right? All right, so next we would like to talk about the best practices. And I think the former user talked about a lot of this, and I'm just going to brush through them again. So you want to be clear and concise in your documentation. You want to avoid writing jargons. I mean, you want to be straightforward. Hit the nail on the head. Be straightforward and don't write jargons, right? You need to avoid repeating stuffs or using statements that have repetitive verbs in them, right? So another one, examples and visualization, right? So you need to like provide clean and clear examples, right? And visualizations that explains what you're trying to say, right? Like code snippet, diagram, screenshots, and that, right? So you need to use consistent terminology. So the projects which you're trying to contribute to might have a guide. They might have the terminology that they use, right? So you don't just want to bump in with something new when you don't need to. So use the project specific term consistently and clearly state new terms. If you must use new terms, clearly state them so they will understand. And another thing, feedback and revision. Always take feedbacks. Always take feedbacks and revise your work. Make sure that you recheck your work. So request reviews, iterate based on feedback. When you request reviews and you're being given feedback, go back again and um, work on the feedbacks. All right, so now common challenges, right? Now, one of the challenges is finding accurate information, like the cross-reference sources and the rest of that. So if you want to finding accurate information, if you want to solve that, one of the things you do is look for cross-reference sources, or rather still ask the maintainers. Ask the maintainers that, okay, so like how will you like us to represent this thing in order to provide something that is accurate enough, right? So talk to the maintainers and sorry, and then it will go a long way for you. Now, another challenge is technical jargons. I talked about this earlier somewhere. So simplify your explanations. Simplify explanations, provide trees, that means pinpoints. Does not really talk about collaboration. Yeah. One of the challenges faces collaboration, right? And how can you collaborate effectively? The rest of them. Use version controls for collaboration. That will help you. Avoid only working on your local machine. Communicate effectively. You have to if you want to, especially open source, you have to be very good communicator. So work on your communication skills. That. So keep up with changes. You can with the project. That's what you need to be in the forum. The project, and then join the conversation and regularly invite documentation. Right? Hopefully, I'm going to all right. So now you have I the project. You already review the documentation. in your own documentation, you have written your contribution, and now it's time for you to. So,
I'm sorry, we can't really hear you. We can't really hear you.
Oh, yes, sorry. Since
Yeah,
okay, since when did that start? Just now.
yeah,
Maybe
for
like
some
over a
minutes.
minute.
Can you hear me?
Over a minute, thereabouts.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, apologies about that. It's going to jump back in a minute. All right, welcome back, Michael.
Hello, you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, dear. I don't know why that's happened.
Yeah.
All right, let me share my screen again. Why did that happen? Let's share it again. Share. Hopefully you guys can see it now.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
All right, awesome. Do I need to go back? Which slide did you stop hearing me? I should just continue.
You could just go back some few slides, like 3 slides backwards.
Okay. Sorry, let me see. Let's go back like slide 5 will be fine. Slide 5, right?
Yeah, this is fine. Yeah, this is good. Thank you.
All right. So yeah. Sorry, I did not know that you guys cannot hear me again. Okay, so I was talking about best practices, right? Where I said you need to provide clear and concise documentation, right? You want to avoid writing jargons and you want to be straightforward, like hitting the nail on the head, right? And then you want to be consistent with terminologies, right? So you don't want to use new words all the time. You want to be consistent and you want to clearly state new terms if you must use. Note, if you must use new terms, then you must state them clearly, right? So the next one is examples and visuals. So you want to provide examples and visuals to explain your documentation, right? Like diagrams, screenshots, and code snippets, like that, right? To explain your documentation. So you must be attentive to feedbacks and revisions. So what does this mean? You take feedbacks, be open to feedbacks, and when they give you feedbacks, do your revision, correct correct your mistakes, work on the feedbacks, and then take another feedback. Just iterate until you have something you can present, right? Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So the next one is common challenges that you face, right? So the common challenges in contributing to open source documentation is finding the accurate information. This is one of the challenges, right? Finding accurate information. Now, how do you fix those, right? You want to ask the maintainers, ask them questions that might help you fish out something, right? So, and cross-reference sources. Look for sources that are related to what they are doing, and then you can get motivation from those ones, right? So, another challenges is technical jargons. Simplify your explanation. Don't avoid tautology, provide glossaries, go straight to the point. I think we talked about this, the rest of that. So collaboration is another challenge that you face, right? So if you're working on, if you want to contribute to documentation that you're not the only one contributing to that documentation, you want to use version controls. So you don't just want to work on your local machine and then straight push. No, you want to use version controls like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and the rest, right? And then you want to communicate effectively with your fellow contributor. So you know what you guys are missing, what you guys have as what you have currently, and how to simplify them, right? So another thing is keeping up with changes is another common challenges. So one of the ways to solve that is stay updated with projects. So stay updated with project changes as the devs make push, then you know what they have done, and then you keep yourself updated, right? So regularly revise.
Sorry, Michael, your mic is muted if you're talking.
Let me take this off. All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes.
Awesome. Let me take. Oh, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's continue. So, talking about the submission process now, you have been able to write it, you understand releasing documentation, you already joined the committee, and then you update. So you have written up your contribution, and now you want to submit, right? So the one thing you want to do is you want to this repository that you're going to, you fork it to your local machine, and then you make your changes, right? Edit the documentation files, then you create a pull request. Now, while creating a pull request, you need to describe the changes that you made clearly, avoid tautology, go straight to the point. So the maintainers will understand where you're coming from, why you
Sorry, Michael.
why.
Hello, Michael.
I can hear you.
Yeah, you're glitching again. I think it's your network issues.
Yeah. You guys can you guys hear me?
We can't hear you properly.
But I can hear. Okay. I don't know what is happening. Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but it seems like your voice is breaking up.
It's breaking. How about now?
Yeah, it's better now.
Yes.
Okay. I already dropped the airpod. I don't know what's going on. Oh yeah. All right. So submission process, right? Now you've already written your contribution, and now you want to submit. You want to submit your documentation for approval. Now you fork the repository, make your changes, and create pull request. In your pull request, this is where the main thing comes in the submission. You want to describe the changes you have made, describe them clearly, avoid tautology. Now be concise, go straight to the point, tell them the changes you've made, why you've made those changes, and why they are necessary to be made, right? So the next thing is communicating with maintainers, right? You make a pull request, then you want to keep communicating with the maintainers. Hopefully they have feedback for you, or maybe they have necessary adjustments. You just want to keep yourself updated with what's going on with your pull request, right? So the next is skill development.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we can't see your presentation.
Hey, hey, good a big, good a big, good a big. Can't share your screen.
Maybe you could
Can't
leave and
sh-
join again.
Nigeria will fuck you up. All right.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Awesome. So let me just finish this quick. So benefits of contributing. There are some benefits in contributing to open source, right? One of the benefits is skill development. So if you maybe you don't have, I mean, to get a job now, you actually need experience. That's the irony, right? And to get experience, you need a job, right? But one way you can get experience is contributing to open source. So it helps your skill development, and then it helps give you that experience. Now, building portfolios, it helps you in building portfolios. You can showcase your contributions on your portfolio to open source, and then it will give you a push. Another thing is networking opportunity. I have actually made a lot of friends from contributing to open source, and they have been part of me up to date. They have been supportive and the rest of that. So you get to network with people, meet people, and that will help your career, right? So giving back, it's also nice to give back to the community. It's very, very good to support the community. And then, yeah. So these are resources, right? Resources where you can get tutorials and guides on how to contribute to open source. Resources where you can get tools to contribute to open source, and resources where they are all links and forums that you can join, the chat groups you can join, and mentorship programs that are actually available for you, right? So hopefully you guys will get the slide and it will help you. Thank you very much. So in conclusion, start small and build confidence. Start contributing to an open source today, no matter how small it is, and you build your confidence, and then you can contribute to larger projects. One of the projects I hope to contribute to one day is Python and Django. Hopefully, I get there too. But then start small and build confidence. If you have further questions, you can hit me up on Twitter. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
That's
much, Mike.
now.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for sure, we'll get the slide across to everyone that joined, because the resources and the slides will be really valuable to the participants on the call. Thank you so much, Michael. We understand that network can be sometimes very bad.
Yeah, I don't know. Nigeria, we shall mess you up. That's
I know,
something.
right? I know, right? So, do we have any questions for Michael? Do we have any questions before we move to the Q&A section? Okay, so since there are no questions, so I would go ahead and share my screen. We also have like mini questions for people to answer. So I'll share my screen now. Please kindly do let me know when you see my screen. Awesome. So just like our Kando mentioned, you could scan this QR code. Can you see my screen, everyone?
No, I can see your face.
Oh, okay, awesome. Sorry, wait just a moment. Let me share my screen. Okay, how about now? Okay, great.
Yes.
Great. So we have some Q&A sections here. So just like how we did in the previous session, we could just scan this QR code, or we could go to menti.com and enter the code down below. So if you scan the QR code, could you drop like an emoji or a like? Let me know how many people are joined. Awesome. Thank you, Kristen. So let's wait for others. Okay, I see more hands. Thank you, confidence. All right. Okay, great. So we could go ahead and start then. Okay, so these questions are related to the topic Michael just explained now. So how do you contribute to open source documentation? So we have the first one that says, what is your level of experience with open source documentation? Okay, great. So I can see responses. Wow, we have one advanced. Wow, awesome. Okay, wow. All right, great. So we can see that a lot of people here are still beginners with open source, and we hope we hope to put more valuable resources that will take people from beginner level to intermediate level and advanced. So the second question is, what challenges have you faced while trying to contribute to open source documentation? It could just be short responses, just a word. Yes, getting something to contribute to. I can relate to that. I've not started. Okay, make it a pull request. Awesome. First time knowledge of the product. These are solid responses, yeah. Solid responses. Let's wait for others to send in their responses. Okay. Finding accurate information. Thank you. So let's move to the next question. It says, which type of documentation contribution interests you the most? Writing new documentation. Okay. Okay, good. Wow. Awesome. Wow. Oh, awesome. Awesome. Thank you for the responses. So let's do a couple more questions and then we'll move on to the next agenda. It says, what tools or platform have you used for documentation and what was your experience like? Google Docs. So GitHub at first was difficult, but then was easier. Great. Medium. Yes. Yes. Okay, so let's do just one more question and then we would move on to the next thing. Postman. Yes, Google Docs. Yes, awesome. Mostly GitHub and Google Docs. Wow. Okay. ArcMD to save your drafts. Great. Awesome. So let's do one final question. So what is the most important aspect of good documentation to you? Mm. Clarity, visual aid, conciseness. I see most people are going for clarity, and that's really important because, well, accuracy too. Clarity is really important. And just as Emmy mentioned, you could use the Emmy Way editor as well to check your clarity score. It's a really valuable tool. Awesome. Thank you so much. This was really great. So I would. So should we do more questions because there are still more interesting questions? Should we do one or two more questions? If you want to do more questions, could I see some emojis? Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, let's do more questions then. Awesome, great. So it says, how do you think contributing to documentation can benefit your career? Documentation can benefit your career. This is an interesting question. Collaboration. For me, it will help me network and help me build my portfolio too as well. So, I mean, first-hand experience, very great. Public value, yes. Because you get to meet people as well in niche. Awesome. It says, how confident do you feel about submitting your first pull request for documentation? Yeah, that first pull request is really important. Wow. Wow. In between. Yeah. Neutral. Awesome. Great. Good. Great. Awesome. So let me see if there are any questions. Okay, so that's the end of the interactive Q&A section. Thank you all for attending. I really learned a lot, and trust for sure would also provide valuable resources that would also help you make that first pull request and also help you contribute to your career as well in open source. So thank you very much. I would pass it on to my host, my co-host, Kando. The floor is all yours.
Okay, the floor is for both of us anyway, but that's fine. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for your part. Thank you so much, everyone, for engaging. I think this was a pretty much very, very interactive webinar, and we have learned so much. But before I summarize, I'm going to be dropping a link to a form right now. And in this form, there are questions here. Each of these questions have points, okay? And anyone who has the most points from giving the correct answers will be awarded something. Just a note that you'll be contacted if you're the person with the most points, would mention that and you'll be contacted to receive something. But here is the link to the form, and you can check it out now to answer the questions. Before we summarize, this form will be closed. It's pretty competitive, so we're giving about 5 or less minutes for you to attempt the questions here and earn some points as you do so. After which we'll close the form. All right, like I mentioned earlier, this has been a pretty interactive and wonderful session. It has been awesome to listen to our two wonderful speakers, Amy and Michael, even though he was having some network issues. Personally, one thing that really appealed to me was during Amy's session where he kept talking about identifying who your audience is. And he also made it simple that you have to group your audience based on role, you have to group them based on expertise and use case, depending on what you're writing about. You also need to develop a persona for your audience. And I think this one is a very valid point, because if you clearly understand who your audience is, the rest of your documentation will be pretty easy. pretty simple for you. And we also listened to Michael dish out points on contributing to open source as a tech writer. Yes, this has been a very wonderful conversation. And going forward, there are some announcements that will be happening on Right Tech Hub. We will soon be launching an ebook. Yes, we'll be launching an ebook, and this is an open call for everyone who follows Right Tech Hub, for everyone who has been an added follower of us, part of the bootcamp, or basically interested in what we do as a brand. This is an opportunity for you to learn from us firsthand and get ready to have access to that ebook. Announcements following this will be shared on the socials. So this is an opportunity for you to follow us and keep notifications on for when this announcement will be made. Secondly, we are also accepting committed and vibrant members into our community. We are a large community of passionate technical writers. We are persons who love to talk about technical writing, and there's so much happening within the community that we want you all to be part of. So if you're not already part of the community, head on to our website. Let me quickly get the link, and I'll drop that here so that you can sign up. Yes, so just head on to righttechhub.org/our community, and then you can take a look at ways to connect with Right Minds. There's the right group for you as a technical writer. We have technical writing enthusiasts, we have experts, there are mentors in the house, and there are so many things that the community affords you. There's mentorship, career development, job opportunities, and community engagement. Also note that we recently hopped on a partnership with Propel to onboard members within our community to Propel. So if you're looking to begin your technical writing career and gain access to job opportunities, this is a pretty wonderful chance for you to join our community and onboard yourself on Propel so that you can get these job updates often. Okay, we are just a few minutes before the form is closed. So I hope that some of you have already given your answers and that you have submitted and you're looking forward to earning something once we review and get answers to everyone who submitted. Okay, guys, this has been a very wonderful session. I think I'll just give time for one person to share what they've been able to learn from the webinar so far, and then we'll basically wrap up. So if you would like to share, if you'd like to say something, a summary, something you've learned and what you want to look forward to, then this is an opportunity to do so. Okay, probably everyone is focused on submitting the form. So, Jimmy, if you can share, please, a summary on Michael's talk, and let's just use that to give more time for persons to fill the form.
Awesome. So Michael's talk was really great because it's a very exciting topic when it comes to technical writing, yeah. Because I feel most people have this mindset, or should I say this blocker, when they want to contribute to open source. I think the first thing is most people don't even know where they would even contribute, how to contribute. So Michael broke down everything. He also had the valuable resources. And for sure, I myself, I'll be checking out those resources as well, because, you have to learn every day. So he also talked about accuracy and clarity, which is really important when you want to contribute to open source as well. And he also shared very insightful topics and insightful tips on how you could contribute, also making use of accurate tools, also making sure your writings are accurate, and also avoiding technical jargons. You also need to avoid technical jargons. He also talked about how how you could also different kinds of open source documentation you could also do. For example, you could try to translate a documentation from a different language to another language for a diverse audience. So all those are really great tips, and for sure, I'm sure by the time everyone gets their hands on the slides Michael shared, they could start contributing to open source. And yeah.
All right. Thank you, Jimmy. Well done. Well done for that.
Bob Shegun has something. He says, please, can we get the link? Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You get a link to Michael's slides.
All right, guys, we are 3 minutes out. This has been a wonderful time, and we look forward to doing this with you again. So even after this call ends, we'll give a few more minutes, let's say 2 or 3 more minutes, so you guys can fill the form, and then we'll close that. And whomever has the most points will, of course, be reached out to. So thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you to our speakers, Emmy and Michael. Thank you to everyone who participated, who asked questions, and those who made the chat section a little bit lively with their comments. Christine, thank you, Christine, for that. All right, guys, we look forward to another webinar soon. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Bye, guys. Thank you.